Red She-Hulk is a character who has a whole lot of history. First appearing in Hulk Volume 2 issue 15 in 2009, the woman behind the hulking red monster has a much larger tale to tell. Her human counterpart Betty Ross existed long before her Red She-Hulk alter ego did, since The Incredible Hulk issue 1 back in 1962 to be exact. Red She-Hulk hit the scene after Betty was resurrected from stasis by Leader and MODOK during the fall of the Hulk storyline, undergoing the same process that her father Thaddeus Ross had undergone to become the Red Hulk. But aside from transforming into this hulking red monster, the woman behind the gamma radiation has an interesting past, full of trauma and other aliases fitting of another lifetime. So today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 Red She-Hulk shocking facts, and taking a look particularly at Betty Ross and her history. Let's jump in. And at number 10, her personality. When Betty Ross first came to be, one half of her creators, Stan Lee, had a very distinct kind of personality in mind for the character. He intended for her to be strong-willed and independent-minded, yet a conventionally polite woman, because hey, it was the 60s. She was severely loyal to Bruce, determined that the man that she loved would be returned to her. But by the time that the 80s rolled around, her 1962 characterization got a bit of an update thanks to John Byrne, who was the writer and artist on the Incredible Hulk series at the time, for like a very short amount of time. He decided to make Ross more willful and confrontational, which were traits that ended up sticking long past his tenure on the series. And at number 9, Harpy. Long before Betty ever became Red She-Hulk, she was the Harpy. Who's that? Well, in 1973 in issue 168 of The Incredible Hulk, the villain MODOK kidnaps Betty and experiments with a higher level of gamma radiation on her than Bruce experienced. This turns her into the half-woman, half-creature hybrid known as Harpy, which MODOK then uses as a means of attacking the Hulk. Banner eventually finds a cure for her by the time issue 169 rolls around, with her returning to her human form. Later on, Betty's face would be used on Harpy robots after the World War Hulk storyline when Bruce Banner was imprisoned at the Gamma base, all as part of a cruel way to ensure that he did not escape. And at number 8, her tragic childhood. Betty wouldn't be a comic book character if she didn't have some sort of traumatic past. And Betty's past, her childhood in particular, fits right into the classic comic book trope of dead parent. While Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross is her father, Betty's mother is much less well known. That's because she died when Betty was a kid. Karen Lee Ross married Thaddeus and followed him around the world to every single post that he was assigned to, until she got pregnant with Betty, and Thaddeus managed to get a post in New Hampshire near his childhood home so Betty could grow up there. But when Betty was 12, Karen died of cancer. It's really tragic. And at number 7, the MCU. Betty Ross has been portrayed twice up on the big screen. The first was Jennifer Connelly in the 2003 non-MCU canon movie, Hulk. The second time was by Liv Tyler in the MCU film that everyone forgets existed, 2008's The Incredible Hulk. This version of Betty, who hasn't appeared in the MCU since, worked as a microbiologist who had moved on from Banner and was dating another doctor. That film ended off with the Hulk running away, leaving Betty behind as she watched him go. Now, back in 2017, prior to the release of Avengers Infinity War, there's a whole lot of speculation online that Liv Tyler may reprise her role as Betty in the film. Those of you who have seen Infinity War, though, know that she clearly did not. But considering her father, Thaddeus Ross, played by William Hurt, returned to the franchise in Captain America Civil War and also Infinity War, Betty's return is still highly under debate. Might not be Liv Tyler, but hey, at least we might get a Betty somewhere down the line. Wonder how Black Widow will feel about that. Moving on to number 6, she married Bruce, and then died. In 1986, Betty and Bruce's will they won't they was finally resolved when the two got married in The Incredible Hulk issue 319. This was the second time that they tried to tie the knot though, with their first ceremony being cut off in the 1970s The Incredible Hulk Volume 1 issue 124 when Rhino appeared and the two fought. Their second wedding ceremony was also really interrupted when Bruce was forced to turn into the Hulk, except they ended up going through with the marriage. Aside from this little mishap, the two began a happily married life together, up until the editors decided to interrupt that with something tragic. Because of Betty's constant exposure to the Hulk, she acquired gamma sickness, which poisoned her and almost killed her. Bruce then invented a cure made out of his own blood to save her, but despite that, trouble still occurred when the Abomination swapped Bruce's blood sample with his own prior to Betty's transfusion, which obviously made her condition worse. She then died of radiation, but Thaddeus Ross then put her body into cryogenic stasis, blaming Bruce for the death of his daughter for a very, very long time. And at number 5, Glenn Talbot. Bruce isn't the only man that Betty's been been married to. After trouble in paradise with Bruce following their attempt at a wedding, she ended up marrying another man who had been interested in her for a very long time in The Incredible Hulk issue 156, Major Glenn Talbot, her father's security chief who always thought poorly of Bruce. Betty finally gave in to Glenn when she found out that Bruce had affections for another woman, but their marriage didn't last long either. While on their honeymoon, Betty's father had gone on a mission to pursue the Hulk, which resulted in him being captured and sent to a Soviet prison. Talbot was part of the rescue mission, and while it was successful, he was assumed to have been killed in action. Betty suffered a nervous breakdown upon learning this news. After the fact, when it was revealed otherwise, she would divorce Glenn in The Incredible Hulk in issue 238. Later, when she would return as Red She-Hulk, a life model decoy of Glenn Talbot would accompany her for a while in order to constantly monitor her and control her. And at number 4, mental health. Speaking of nervous breakdowns, Betty has had a long history of struggling with her mental health, which has only been made worse by her transformation into the Red She-Hulk. Now, aside from nervous breakdowns and prior to her transformation, the character exhibited signs of anxiety and mental instability thanks to several traumatic events that we'll be discussing later on in our list. There has been multiple times where she's been depicted as perhaps being bipolar, and even dealing with depression, even if it hasn't been stated explicitly in the panels. As Red She-Hulk, this instability only thickened. The character in her Hulk form derives enjoyment from extreme violence and domination. But on the flip side of that, which further fuels the theory that she's struggling with bipolar disorder, she has more morose moments in the comics too, as Red She-Hulk, like when the character walked with a blind Red Hulk through the sewers. Her mood swings are notable, to say the least. Up next, number 3, who is she? When Betty Ross first became Red She-Hulk, there was a lot of confusion surrounding the character's return. At the time, no one knew that it was Ross who was taking up the mantle. Or starting with the mantle, rather. Red She-Hulk was officially announced at the 2009 San Diego Comic-Con, but the identity behind the hulking beast was a mystery that spawned a whole lot of debate amongst fans. Now, during this first reveal, one of the details provided by Marvel concerning the character was that she had some sort of connection to Domino. In addition to that, in the artwork that was released, she was wielding Elektra's favorite weapon, the Sai, and also wearing Domino's leather catsuit. Others speculated that perhaps the character was actually just the She-Hulk. As more details came out, it was revealed that those items of Elektra's and Domino's were actually stolen. The possibility of her being She-Hulk was also ruled out thanks to the announcement that the character would be participating alongside She-Hulk in the World War Hulk storyline. So, all in all, there was a ton of hype surrounding who she actually was. And when it was revealed that she was Betty Ross, the reactions were positive, with a mix of surprise and a lot of like, oh, hey, yeah, I guess that makes perfect sense. Moving on to number 2, Yellow. The Red Hulk and Red She-Hulk have some unique powers compared to their green counterparts. Running through their veins is yellow blood. But that's not the only feature Betty's She-Hulk has got. While her eyes are also yellow, she's also got yellow saliva. And that saliva is acidic. In one instance, in a confrontation with Wolverine, Red She-Hulk spits at him. And turns out that her saliva, which was bright yellow in color, was acidic, burning through Wolverine's skin immediately on impact. Now, speaking of that battle with Wolverine, it was also a great show of the character's physical endurance. She barely flinched when Wolverine stabbed her with his claws. But considering that she's fought with the likes of Hulk and She-Hulk on multiple occasions, she definitely knows how to withstand a beating, and give one out. That's for sure. And finally, in at number 1, her miscarriage. Peter David, who had a 12-year-long run on the Incredible Hulk title that began in the 80s, largely influenced many of the aspects of the character and themes in his narratives that we've come to know as commonplace now. This included playing with the idea of the Hulk's multiple personality disorder, and establishing that Bruce Banner had a traumatic past filled with childhood abuse from his father. But it wasn't just Bruce Banner that David was keen on developing and nurturing as a character. His portrayal of Betty Ross, which took major cues from the work of John Byrne, was also key, at least as far as he was concerned. So much so that the writer actually refused to write a certain issue in which Betty experiences a miscarriage, something that David felt strongly against. The miscarriage, which occurred in The Incredible Hulk Volume 1 issue 360, was written by editor Bob Harris instead, because David felt, I quote, "The reason I refused to do it was because Betty was really losing her child to editorial fate. It was decided by the powers that be that Betty and Bruce were not to become parents, because that would make the characters seem too old to the younger readers. My run on the book almost ended with that issue. I nearly walked over it. But there were so many stories that I still wanted to tell, that ultimately I stayed with it, even though I fumed about it for quite a while." Now, in this issue, Villain Despair also torments Betty with images of family members and loved ones that she's lost or believes to be dead, including Glenn Talbot, her father, and her mother. All in all, it was a pretty grueling issue for Betty. Alright, there we have it, friends. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Which ones didn't? Give us a shout in those comments below and let us know. If you'd like us to do another facts list on other characters in any of the comic book universes, be sure to give us a shout about that too. We love hearing from you guys. If you dug this video, you guys know the drill. Hit that like button and spread the love. Share with a friend. And if you're new, come join our Nerd Nation by hitting that subscribe button. We even have a nifty little playlist currently flashing on your screen if you feel like diving down into our YouTube rabbit hole. In the meantime though, thanks for watching everybody. I'll catch you all, hopefully, in the next video.